a principle in the African Bantu tradition that I am me because of you. If I dehumanize you, I am lessening myself. In my healing myself, I have to heal you. It's a very fundamental principle by which the African people have lived. And nowhere did this come out more clearly than at the time of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, where forgiveness became such a powerful factor that it wasn't something imposed on the people of South Africa. I mean, if you read Desmond Tutu's book, No Future Without Forgiveness, it is unbelievable that how people could draw from their own cultural tradition to be able to forgive and to move on in life. And I think this is exemplified no better by anybody than Nelson Mandela himself. But Mandela was not the only person. I'm sure Albie will be able to tell you that that whole group of people, Dennis Goldberg, Amit Kathrada, Walter Sisulu, Governor Mbeki, they were a whole group of people who believed in the principle that you cannot requite bad with bad. Anything that's bad has got to be met with better, something good. So I can see Albie already has come on the scene, and I'll leave it to him to tell us about the wonderful work. Albie, hello, lovely to see you.
Yes, hello there. Who's my interrogator?
I'm here, Albie, just up here. So Theo, a real pleasure to meet you. It's a long time. Just to introduce, I saw Albie speak in Bristol over a decade ago, and it was an immense pleasure then. You've seen a huge amount of upheaval of your life, and you've been at the forefront of it, Albie. How do you feel what's happening now resonates, and what advice do you have for us as we're going through and living this situation?
I read somewhere somebody said the advantage of being pretty old is you can always remember times when things were worse, and in a sense, I grew up during World War II, which was just such a huge, terrible calamity with destruction. We got through it, and we came out, in a sense, stronger because we repudiated the racism, the Nazism, and so on. I've lived through the struggle against apartheid, which was this cruel form of oppression, institutionalized, backed up by powerful states throughout the world with racist, often theological kind of background. We got through that. And so from that point of view, we'll get through this calamity, and hopefully we will come out stronger for it. And one of the things that has come through to me has been the extraordinary sense of interdependence between human beings. Chatting to my son recently about something, I was speaking about dependence, where somebody dominates and somebody else is dependent. Mm-hmm. Independence, where you separated, and it's a very important moment when you become independent from dependence. But there's interdependence, mm-hmm. which is the connecting up of the relationship between people, not hostile, not in that sense independence, meaning I'm separate from you, I want to get on with my life, don't get in my way. In South Africa, we say, voetsak, get out of the way, becoming a principle of life. Instead of that being the connection, the relationship, we are human beings. We actually improve and enhance our autonomy through connecting up with other human beings, through nurturing, through culture, through association, through experience, through empathy. Empathy is not destructive. Empathy is not a surrender. Empathy is a connection with other human beings that is very nourishing to our own souls, to our own beings. And it's actually interesting because it satisfies that element of curiosity. You place yourself into the lives of others and you're not frightened by it. You're not repelled by it. You don't feel keep away. Mm-hmm. How interesting, how astonishing, how marvelous human beings are in the interconnection. But one of the themes that I would like to see highlighted by people like yourselves is the question of the vaccine. Who will control the vaccine? Will the vaccine be an instrument of healing, of interconnection, of, if you like, love? Human beings expressing the interconnection with each other? Or will it be a weapon and instrument of accumulation, of national power, of aggrandizement, of domination? And it can so easily be either that. And I think it's important for the world to be prepared for the idea that the vaccine becomes the property of all humanity. We don't place water, or we don't place the rain, we don't place the air we breathe, we don't place oxygen in the marketplace. We're entitled to water, oxygen. We should be entitled to the vaccine. Yeah. And humanity should feel obliged, not because somebody is going to lose an election or somebody's going to lose pride, should feel obliged that, okay, you can get certain bragging pride being the first, but you get the pride for being the first to help humanity, not the first to colonize an important element of health and healing, so that you can become very rich very, very quickly, and you can call the shots and you can say, we are the greatest scientists, we're more clever than anybody else. There's nothing clever about being clever. In fact, it can be very stupid to be clever in that sense, when you're appropriating good knowledge and sharing out the good knowledge. And I believe, in terms of the development of vaccines to the other coronaviruses, a big breakthrough was made in humanitarian terms, not allowing the farmers to colonize the vaccines, and getting agreements between the health sectors in the different countries that whatever the intellectual property interest might be or could have been, in a case of a pandemic of this kind, there has to be a sharing out and a distribution of the vaccines to the countries and to the people who need it the most. Mm-hmm. And for me, that would be a very good way of reconciling inventiveness, energy, scientific knowledge, the pursuit of the good, which so many people want, with humanity and, if you like, a deep spiritual sense of human interconnection.
I love that you've mentioned the sense of the need for human interconnectivity, what's happened. I think love is such an important word that we need to use generously as well, so that we really embed it into how we think and act. But also it's interesting to reflect on these interconnections with the environment and using those principles, particularly water, which moves above and below ground, and it defies these natural borders. And this pandemic has really brought us together to defy some of those laws which we've imposed to a degree. In terms of,
I would support that completely, and I see a very strong analogy with climate change. It's all humanity, and if you allow some people, some nations, some owners of property, some inventors to just go ahead and say, well, they're not dropping bombs on anybody else, they're not physically assaulting anybody else, where's the problem? In fact, that is the problem. They are depleting the atmosphere, and also they're creating that element of irresponsibility, of greed, of grasping, and disrespect for other human beings. So hopefully in this period in our world, in our lives, where on the one hand, people are coming together to repudiate the cruelty visited on black bodies, but in a massive way all over the world, people marching and speaking out, there's clearly an ache for dignity and decency. And against that idea of misfortune somehow being an inevitable calamity, to convert misfortune into injustice, I think that's what's happening. And outer space, the sea, all these important areas, it's terrifying to think that they might be colonized, appropriated. The human gene should belong to all humanity, certain core features of existence, and that would include the environment, the atmosphere, the land. I see a strong interconnection, if you like, between the interdependence facing the virus and the interdependence facing climate change and the interdependence facing so many of the calamities that potentially face humanity.
And I think you've drawn on a few matters there, Albie. I was going to bring it over to Mohammed when he returns quickly, and we'll close off. We're a little over time, but it's wonderful to hear of that emphasis on both human rights, on environmental rights, on dignity, decency, and I think that emphasizing these areas is so important. And Mohammed, I will bring it to you for a final thought on the Darwin Trust. And your work in compassion, because I think that resonates with what Albie said. But just before that, do you have any final words of advice for us, Albie, as a young generation coming forward? We're trying to bring connections and ensure that we build what Mohammed described as a new social compact of trust.
I've got a stock answer. When young people ask me for advice, I say the only advice I'll give you is don't listen to the advice from people like me. Be as cheeky, irreverent, in the case you from the Gould family, fantastic, amazing family that's got such a strong part in South African history. I knew that your grandmother, Sissy, is that right?
Yes, that's great aunt.
Your great aunt was very important in my life as it happens. She knew me as a little toddler, and she was feisty and independent and spirited. And I'd like to feel you like that. You don't look to us for advice. You listen to us. You see what we've done. You criticize our mistakes. You learn from the good things that we've done. You take heart from us, if you like. That's all I offer you. But you've got to find your own way, and you've got to be sharp, and you've got to be better than us. And that's one thing one can expect of every generation. Be better than us. Take out the good. Here I'm offering you advice. I'm telling you not to accept my advice, but take out the good that you can see in what we're doing and be better in terms of the bad things that we've done.
Thank you very much, Albie, and thank you for mentioning the great relationship you had with Sissy. I'd love to speak about that in over correspondence at some point. I think maybe I'm not so feisty in that I'm trying to tame that, but at the same time, there's a good time to be dynamic, and now is the time to bring people together. Mohammed, I'm not sure after what Albie said I should turn to you for advice, but I will turn to you to listen.
Well, I'd like to tell Albie, I'm a young man, so I'm one of the persons you're talking about.
Okay.
Yes, I think that basically we were involved in a group trying to uphold the memory of Charles Darwin, who is known for having said that it's survival of the fittest. I think he's misquoted. He said the survival for those who are most ready to adjust. And he said, we need to be compassionate with those people. And so we were trying to work out a framework with a person called Patrick Pietroni, a very well-known medical man in Britain who had done a lot of work in different parts of the world, to see how we can bring compassion back on the table, to create the compassionate scholars of the future. So people going to different disciplines could go into that discipline consciously aware of how compassion can be part of their praxis, part of their training. I know doctors are compassionate, nurses are compassionate. We've seen how many people have given their lives at this time. But the question is, how can we bring compassion back in the practice of medicine, the practice of law, the practice of mediation, the practice of nursing, the practice of journalism? And I think it's all ethically bound with how do you look at the other, how do we look at, as Albie says, the environment, how do we look at social injustice, how do we look at the purpose of meaning? And I think that hopefully that this idea of the compassionate scholar, which has been so close to Professor Pietroni's heart and the group of people who worked with him for the last 10 years, may still find its place in human society. We haven't given up the vision, though it failed for other practical reasons.
Thank you.
I'd like to see that come back on the table. If the coronavirus could do one thing, if it gave rise to new faculties in universities genuinely dealing with what it means to be compassionate, rather than an afterthought that you'll say, I'm a compassionate man, I'll do it when I can. I think we need to bring it back to the table.
I think it's a wonderful way to end, to bring compassion to the forefront, and also to allude there, Mohammed, to the need for meaning. And one thing this pandemic has done, I think it's awoken many of us to that need for meaning, the need for interconnectivity, and the need to celebrate humanity this way, through providing, as Albie put it, emphasizing dignity and decency, and building that social compact of trust, both at a grassroots level and also through global interconnected networks. Albie, thank you so much for joining us at late notice. It's wonderful to meet you, and I hope one day I'll be able to travel to Cape Town and meet you face to face. Mohammed, it's been a wonderful pleasure, and I do so much thank you for coming forward today and for opening your thoughts up to us and providing such a wonderful message. I think there's been a complimentary points made by both you, Albie, and Mohammed. Thank you very much, and good night to everybody. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Good night.
Good night.